Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Oropi Kura, no Papamao Ahau, ko Andrew King, taku ingoa Tumuaki o Oropi Kura. I'm here to talk with you today regarding the role school leaders have in nurturing the foundations of education in primary schools. Oropi is a school on the outskirts of Tauranga Moana. We have 350 students, year 1 to 8, and we've been on the play-based learning journey for about the last 10 years, operating it throughout the school, influencing pretty much everything we do from the actual program itself, which happens at the beginning of every day across the school, to our assessment practices, planning practices, and teachers as noticers, recognisers, and responders. I just want to highlight some things before I get to some key questions that I'd like to raise with you as a listener. Again, we see ourselves at a bit of a crossroads due to the changed political landscape that happened towards the end of 2023. It's important for us to be taking some time to consider these factors of influence. They must be questioned, reviewed, and critiqued in relation to our own school contexts. And this is particularly for those of us who are on a journey implementing play and for schools focused on trying its best to cater for the whole child. In front of you is some of the rhetoric that we are hearing. It's about removing distractions in our school system, making sure that 80% of kids are achieving in reading, writing, and mathematics and science. And to do that, we need to teach our core subjects more brilliantly. And that alongside that is measuring progress and achievement more rigorously through standardized assessment, performance targets. An issue that's already around that we're all fully aware of is the need to address attendance. There is a ministerial advisory group that's been set up to review the reviewed curriculum. We need the other rhetoric is around better training to support teachers, and alongside that reprioritizing PLD for in the areas of reading, writing, mathematics, and science, and that there's less of a focus on soft skills and more on knowledge. The deficit thinking mode is well and truly in live, focused on saying how kids are failing to meet minimal standards. And the notion of tiger parenting is out there, which sends alarm bells personally, which I'll get to at some point. It would be pretty easy for us to get sucked into pacifying our passion for the journey we're on as a school with play by being very literal in our approach to what is being politically required. However, as school leaders, we must hold strong to what we believe in and not throw out all that we consider as we consider how we need to or should comply with ministerial requirements, particularly if we see our role as addressing the need of the whole child, their skills, dispositions for learning, and knowledge. Coupled with the pressures of the educational landscape that we've got going on at the moment, we have a lot being discussed in media and social media. Parent chats and groups informed and influenced by that. We've got boards of trustees to work with as we work to implement some of the new and changed requirements coming into place. We've got huge levels of research out there in relation to the rhetoric that we're hearing, but also to counter that. A lot of international data, particularly PISA, is being shared and around some damning statistics. We have a lot of experts voicing opinion, and we have advisory and advocacy groups and politicians providing input and thought into what is needed in education at the moment. Up until now, those things that we have been working on have been the Tomorrow Schools Review, the tool Te Rito, which is ministry driven, That's another thing that we've been working on is that I'm talking nationally here is the ongoing records of learning for the child and progressions-based assessment. We've now got the NELPs, which the National Education and Learning Priorities, which are informing our strategic direction nationally. We've had the curriculum refresh, and the way Ero is reviewing schools has changed significantly over the last few years. So, just want to pause for a bit here and ask you some key questions. What are our educational foundations, or what are your educational foundations in your kura? Who and what informs that? What and who are you led by in education? I want you to really think about that and feel free to come back to that at another point in time. Basically, I'm asking, what drives you? Are you informed or driven by the pressures from voices and noises in education and or the topics in our current educational landscape? Or are you driven by and informed by your core beliefs about teaching and learning? What I'm getting at is the importance for us to be driven by our educational beliefs and passions about teaching and learning, which for Oropi School is represented in our philosophy statements and is based on play pedagogy. So, our philosophy is what drives and informs us at Oropi School. It's our foundation and our why. It is why we do play in our school. It doesn't mean that we ignore the landscape and the voices and the noises and the progress to date. We consider it. At Oropi, we've made considerable progress with the implementation of play across the whole school, and it won't be abandoned. It doesn't need to be. Why would our core beliefs about teaching and learning need to be abandoned even with the pressures and priorities from others upon us? As educational leaders, we should be concerned with what we are strategically putting in place now for the future success of our students, thinking about the long-term aspirations. For example, equity is a huge issue in our education system that requires a long-term sustained commitment, which cannot be achieved simply by pendulum shifts every 3 years. Here is what we've been using at our school to date. And as I've noted down the bottom there, none of that disappears. None of it's going to disappear in this current pendulum swing because it's based on our long-term vision represented in what we believe in through our philosophy, which was on the previous slide, and which we firmly believe is about preparing the whole child for their future success as a whole person. So we are still on a journey and will continue to be implementing play resourcing and programs across the whole school, learning stories, the use of P-Blot, the play-based learning observation tool as a tool across our school for teaching practice. Our relentless focus on progressions-based assessment and the use of learning stories within that is really important because it's about a strengths-based approach. We talk about responsive planning, and that will always be a priority where we are planning based on the need in front of us at the time, and that our core business as a teacher is being a noticer, recognizer, and responder. And this doesn't mean that we ignore the current landscape, voices, and noises. There is validity and some degree of truth to these points when you approach these points in a considered way. So here is what we're doing about some of these things, which I'm going to talk to based on the points in front of you on this slide. When we hear the rhetoric about distractions and the need to address attendance, at Oropi, play at the start of the day to provide context and meaning for formal learning is part of the solution to that, plus fostering learning dispositions and readiness to access the curriculum. Providing rich context with loose parts and a range of hands-on resources and provocations is also helping with addressing attendance. Children wanting to come to school to carry on with passion projects. It's providing a context so children can discover and foster their passions and interests to take into their formal learning of reading, writing, and mathematics. The other rhetoric is about the need for 80% of kids to be succeeding and to be measuring progress better, and what are we going to do about kids who are failing to meet the standard. Again, we will be continuing on our path of progressions-based assessment and taking children further in their learning based on what they can do, where they're at, and their next steps. We continue to have target groups we focus on in our teams. We're still using learning stories as so we can communicate with the child and their parents about their child as a learner. In terms of the point about teaching core subjects brilliantly, I would say this can be achieved brilliantly when you can draw on the rich contexts of learning you have provided children with during their play and passion project time to help kids generate the best quality writing that they can achieve, for example, and to go into deeper mathematical thinking and problem solving and thought. Writing is one of those classic examples where a kid can easily fail to write a good story if they're given a topic to write about that has no meaning or connection to their world. However, get them to write about something that does, and they won't fail. Yes, I believe it's as simple as that, and why play is so important. It provides that context. The other really important thing in this current climate is working with and talking with your parents and boards of trustees and taking regular opportunities for engagement and consultation and updating parents through information evenings and newsletters and flyers and so forth, fronted by the leadership team, is pretty important with the support of your teachers. In terms of all that gets discussed on social media, something that we do and we consciously and actively do from time to time is use our Facebook page, our school's Facebook page, to highlight examples of the connection with play and curriculum coverage. And being aware of what is discussed on social media and taking note and responding to this outside of social media through forms of communication such as newsletters is really important as well. Then in terms of the research going on and the data being highlighted, such as the PISA results and advocacy groups speaking up and so forth, it's really important for schools and for school leaders to equip their teachers by actively reading and discussing that stuff that we're seeing that's coming through, connecting and reflecting back to our philosophy and our emerging graduate profile that we're working on at the moment. We can't be afraid to talk to these groups and seek to understand their point of view. Likewise, we need to let them know our point of view. So I'd like to finish by saying it's so important that we do not forget that play-based learning is something we need in our schooling system because of where modern society is at. I liken it to the days when IT and computers were all the rage. In the 1990s and early 2000s, it was all about providing time for kids to create, design, and engage with IT, and give them time on computers in schools. These days, kids don't need to be taught that to the same degree and have that sort of device time because it has swung almost too far. And I'd argue that what is missing now is play. Kids living on smaller sections, addicted to devices and social media in their spare time, having less opportunity outside of school for kids to play. And so we need to provide contexts for play at school to ensure kids are not forgetting to engage with the natural world and one another as social beings, and to provide kids with real context to their learning. So it's a need for schools now to address well-being, skills, and dispositions for learning to ensure kids can become successful, thriving, creative adults. While it might be highlighted that there is a need for more time on knowledge teaching versus skills teaching, let's not forget our modern need. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.